They were recognizing that the love that I had for my dog was the same love that they had for their own pet. And it was just really very rewarding and touching to be able to strike the right note.
This is Paw Print, an animal rescue community, episode 33. I'm Harold Ree.
And I'm Nancy Ree. Today's guest is the wonderful writer Eileen Mitchell.
For those of you who are readers of the San Francisco Chronicle, today's episode is a special treat. For many years, Eileen Mitchell wrote about pets and people in her column, Pet Tales. She wrote all the way through February of 2015 and continues writing on her own blog, found at eileenmitchell.blogspot.com. Later in the episode, I recommend you grab a handkerchief as Eileen reads one of her past columns that she wrote about her first Greyhound, Elvis. If you want to learn more about Eileen Mitchell and see some wonderful dog photos, go to our show notes at thisispawprint.com/33. That's the number 33.
My name's Eileen Mitchell, and I live in Northern California with my adopted Greyhound, Hazel. By day, I'm a marketing communications manager, and in my spare time, I do freelance writing, and I focus a lot on animal rescue in my writing. I'm always hoping to raise people's awareness about pet rescue.
Do you think of yourself more as a marketing person or more as a writer?
Well, I'm kind of fortunate in that the job that I do, even though I'm a marketing writer, I do a lot of human interest type articles I work for a nonprofit. A lot of times I'm working on human interest stories for the organization, which is what I really enjoy. I like exploring people. I like writing about lives and stories and experiences. And the writing that I do for this organization allows me to pursue that passion. I kind of able to do both in my job.
Nice. How long would you say you've been writing these kinds of stories?
Well, I started kind of by accident in 2001 when I adopted my first Greyhound, and I was just so enraptured and in love with this dog that I wanted to share the experience. So I wrote about all the emotions and uncertainties and feelings that came along with adopting this dog, and I just wrote an essay about it, and I shot it to the Chronicle, San Francisco Chronicle. And they got such an overwhelming response, which was shocking to me. I didn't think even one person would write in response to it. And it got such an overwhelming response that I was invited to submit another one, and another one, and another one. And before I knew it, they invited me to have a monthly column.
No kidding.
Called A Dog's Life. And so I had the indulgence of writing about my dog once a month for a major newspaper, which was such an indulgence, but it was true act of love, and I really loved doing it.
How many articles did you end up writing, and how many years did you end up doing this?
Well, I wrote about Elvis, the retired Greyhound. I wrote about him from 2001 till about 2008. I think it was about 7 years. And then at that time, my editor proposed, instead of keeping it just about Elvis, why don't you open it up and invite other people to share their stories? And I thought, well, that's a great idea. I'd love to hear what other people have to say. So from 2008 until last year, I was covering other people's pet stories, and they were always rescue and adoption stories. I really had no limits other than I just couldn't accept anything about hunting or,
Sure.
that just like one guy submitted a beautiful story once about his dog, but it was about how he enjoyed going hunting with his dog, and they would hunt for ducks.
Right.
And I wrote back to him and I said, I'm sorry, but my sister has a pet duck. I can't endorse hunting of any kind. And he was really nice about it and understood. But other than that, it was pretty much open to anybody who wanted to share their love for their pet.
There's a lot of directions we can go with this. Why Elvis?
Well, in 2001, I moved into a townhouse that finally allowed pets over the weight of 25 pounds, because I always wanted a large dog. And the home I lived in before was limited to 25 pounds. So I moved into this new house in 2001, and I immediately started researching the best type of dog to fit a small home with a patio backyard. And I kept doing my research, and everything kept coming back to the retired Greyhound. I was really reluctant to get a Greyhound because I grew up with German Shepherds. I wanted something with meat. I wanted something I could really wrap my arms around. And Greyhounds just look so anorexic. I did not want a Greyhound. But everything I read just kept circling back to them. They rarely bark. They're couch potatoes. They're indoor dogs. They're gentle. They're sweet. They're affectionate. And I had picked up an application. One day I was at an art and craft show in San Ramon, and Golden State Greyhound Adoption had a booth set up. I took their flyer, and I held on to it for about a year. And finally I thought, okay, I've got to listen to the research. If everything out there is telling me that a Greyhound is the best dog for my lifestyle, then I have to trust the research. So I took a deep breath and I filled out the application and I mailed it to Golden State Greyhound Adoption. And about 2 months later, they said, we've got your dog. They pick out the dog for you based on your needs. If you want a cat-safe dog, if you want a dog that's good with children, if you want a more active dog, if you want a lazy dog, you tell them what your criteria is and they'll do their best to match a dog to fit your lifestyle. They told me they had a retired fawn, a 3-year-old male. His racing name was Wildfire. I picked him up. Actually, they delivered him. They usually pick the dogs up at their house, but in this case, I was on their way, so they delivered the dog to my house. My first thought was sheer panic when I saw this dog. I thought, oh my God, he is 75 pounds. He is half the size of my house. What am I going to do with this dog? And it just turned out to be the best thing I ever did. He truly was the love of my life. He was my canine soulmate. I lost him in 2012 to cancer, and I still miss him to this day, but I've had other Greyhounds since, and it's all been good.
When you think about Elvis, what made Elvis special to you?
Well, I think first because he was my first dog that I had, as an adult, not my parents' dog, but my dog. And he was just so perfect. He was the most gentle, sweet dog, and he was such an ambassador for the Greyhound breed because he is the dog that I wrote my columns about for the Chronicle. And people came to know and love Elvis. Right after when his first story appeared, the first one I wrote about him, and I got all those responses, I also started getting a lot of Elvis Presley memorabilia, bobbleheads and calendars and trinkets. And I thought, why is everyone sending me Elvis Presley memorabilia? There's only one Elvis, Costello, hello. Elvis Presley never even crossed my mind, ever. And so that was kind of funny that it was Elvis Costello. But whenever I would walk him, throughout the Bay Area, people would say, oh, I read about this Greyhound in the Chronicle named Elvis. And I would say, oh, well, this is Elvis. And honestly, they would act like they were meeting the real Elvis. People were just so thrilled to meet this dog. And I heard from so many people that said his stories inspired them to consider a Greyhound, which was the most rewarding thing I could have ever hoped for, that my dog would serve as inspiration for others. Was just really heartwarming and very rewarding.
Now, back in 2001, after you adopt Elvis, now let's be honest, right? Thousands, maybe millions of people out there have adopted an animal. But very few people decide to pick up a pen and say, I'm going to write about this and send this to my local newspaper. What was the inspiration?
Well, that's what I do. I've been writing since I was a child. It's anytime something was going on in my life, whether it was in my journal or in my blog or in just on a document on my computer that no one else would read except my writing partner. Anything that's happening in my life, I always feel compelled to write about it. I grew up reading the Little House in the Prairie books, and I was always enthralled at how she captured her life on paper. And from the time I was in the 4th grade, I've done the same thing. I've always captured my life on paper, no matter how boring or incidental it might be. That's just how I express myself.
That is wonderful. Can you remember the first time you were ever printed, let's say, in a newspaper or a magazine?
It was, oh gosh, it was, I think I was a teenager and it was in 17 magazine. I wrote a poem. And other than that, I never, I had a few essays published here and there in different anthologies and magazine contests, but the Chronicle was my first regular writing assignment.
No kidding. So really up to that point, it sounds like you had always been writing, but nothing that was regularly published in that way, right?
Right. It was really just a hobby that, if I heard about a contest taking place or an anthology that was looking for essays, I would shoot off my story. I'd appeared in several I Should Have Stayed Home anthologies. Those were, that was a series of books about bad vacation experiences. And local college anthologies. And I think I was in Celebrating Greyhounds magazine a couple years ago. Nice. Whenever I heard about things that were available, I would apply or submit my stories. But it's nothing I've never, ever really pursued.
Okay. Over all these years of writing, what have you learned?
I've learned you have to be honest. You can't manipulate a story to what you think the reader wants to read. You have to be completely honest, because if you don't tell the truth, then it comes through in your writing. It comes across as insincere, or it just doesn't read right. And the stories that I've written that have been the most well-received and appreciated have been those where I am really, truly honest, even if it doesn't always make me look good, or if it's not the most pleasant of situations. It's just really about being honest. And I think you also have to be passionate about your writing about it. I think you can tell when you're just phoning it in and just telling a story because you think it might earn a paycheck. I think when you write from the heart and you write with passion, the words will just flow and the reader will appreciate and understand what you're trying to say.
Why do you think that is? I mean, I would say even in podcasting, even on TV, right? People do want to see the real you, right? What is it about that causes folks to have a stronger reaction?
I think they can resonate with what you're saying. And even it doesn't mean that you have to be the most articulate person or the best writer that there is. But I think if you're being honest and passionate, it strikes a chord with people and they appreciate and can relate to what you're saying.
In all the articles that you wrote in your column, was there any particular story or column that really surprised you as far as the reaction?
So many of the stories about Elvis, the reactions that I got, they always touched me because I think I was surprised to find that readers loved my dog as much as I did, that they were picking up on that love and they were recognizing that the love that I had for my dog was the same love that they had for their own pet. And it was just really very rewarding and touching to be able to strike the right note and reach people in that manner and relate to people in that manner.
Eileen Mitchell, she's a writer and has written for many years about her own Greyhound Elvis, along with some other wonderful animals. Other than Elvis, any other animals that really kind of stick out in your mind, whether your own animals or other animals?
After Elvis, I've had other greyhounds since, and I've written about them. But when I was doing the column, there were so many stories that people shared with me that really just touched me. And one in particular was a woman shared a story about a feral cat that she had found. This cat had been living outdoors. It was covered in mange, flea bitten. It was near death, starving. And she kept calling her local rescue organization to see if somebody could come out and help this cat. The response that she always got was, well, if we do, we're going to have to put it down. It sounds like it's beyond repair or beyond help. And she just refused to give in to that. So she took it upon herself to put out a cage. She trapped this cat. She then drove about 30 miles to a rescue organization that she learned about in another town that was a no-kill shelter. She surrendered this cat to them. They said that they would do their best to help it. She paid for its treatment And she sent me the before and after pictures of this cat. And the before picture, it didn't even look like a cat. It didn't even look like an animal. It was so covered in disease and matted fur, and eyes were swollen shut with gunk. It was just such a horrible, pathetic mess that you would have never have imagined that this cat could be saved. And then she sent me the after picture. And his eyes were bright and clear, and his fur was soft and shining and full, and he'd put on weight, and he'd been adopted out to a man who was looking for a cat. And the cat had such a happy ending when I think of where he came from and the shelters that were going to put him down and where this cat ended up today. That was probably one of the best stories I ever used. I still remember it, and I think of it to this day because the before and after pictures were so shocking and such a happy ending.
What's the lesson that story teaches you?
That every life is worth saving, and that you can't give up on an animal just because it appears hopeless. And it took one person, this one person who cared enough to buy a cage and put it out, and she spent weeks trying to lure the cat in, to trap him.
Trying to trap it, right.
Yeah, and one person made such an impact on this animal's life and on the life of the person who ended up adopting him.
Obviously, with the internet, people have noted the general decline of what we might call traditional journalism.
Yeah.
Could be newspapers, TV. Sounds like you at least had a partial view, right, with a column at the San Francisco Chronicle, a newspaper publication. What's been sort of your viewpoint?
Well, it really, really saddens me to see print kind of going away. Every day the demise of another newspaper is announced. And I understand that, they're competing with the internet, and it's just, I cannot read my news online. I've tried, but I can't. All the pop-up ads, and you click on a link and it takes you down a rabbit hole that you can't return from. Mm-hmm. And I think print journalism provides a very valuable contribution to each community, covering local news, not something you're getting off the wire from a writer who lives across the country. But I think we need local journalists to cover local news. And with the decline of print journalism, we're losing that community aspect. We're losing that personal touch that applies to our local lives. And that's what really saddens me.
Thanks for that perspective. What do you think is the future of journalism?
Oh, gosh. I can't answer that. I don't know, because I'm not optimistic about it. I don't know that I really have anything to add or say about that.
Okay. Well, going back to greyhounds, if anybody was listening to you or reading one of your past columns, why should folks consider whether it's a dog in general or a greyhound specifically?
The rescue aspect is so important because there are so many animals out there that need a home, and whether it's a breed specific or a mutt, a cat, there's so many homeless animals, and there's really no need to get from a breeder, because each rescue group, even if you want a purebred dog or a purebred cat, there are rescue groups out there devoted specifically to certain breeds. German Shepherd Rescue, I see them all the time at our local pet food store, and they're these beautiful, majestic animals. They're purebreds. Just for whatever reason, they are in need of a home. So I would always encourage people, before you turn to a breeder, please check out your local rescue groups and your local adoption shelters. My passion lies with greyhounds, and it's because of the life that they live at the track. They really don't have much of a life because they're crated or racing. And when they retire, if a home is not found for them, often in the past they were put to death, or sometimes they were sent to medical facilities for medical practice. So it's really, the greyhounds are something that I'm especially passionate about.
You want to speak a little bit about Golden State Greyhound adoption? In my experience, right, I think greyhound owners in general are pretty passionate lot. I think Golden State Greyhound takes that passion to another level. It's
such a wonderful and supportive rescue group. They're based in Northern California. Very supportive. When you adopt a dog from Golden State Greyhound Adoption, you don't just adopt the dog and then kind of you're on your own. They have a Facebook page. We have a email listserv where every single day we're communicating with one another, fellow adopters, sharing vet tips or food tips, or someone needs someone to watch their dog while they're on vacation. We're constantly swapping, watching each other's dogs, or sharing experiences, or even sometimes just funny photos. But it's a great resource for information and for support. If an animal is sick and you have a question, or they have your dog has a strange symptom, or you're questioning something your vet told you, it's just a really supportive group. And they have been a lifeline for me, because even now, after having belonged to the group for 14 years and having had 4 different Greyhounds, I'm still posting on the site all the time with different questions or answers for other people, for other adopters. It's just a really wonderful group.
Thanks for sharing that. If you could wave a magic wand over animal rescue, what do you think you would change?
Really just, I think what I mentioned earlier, raising awareness to people who want a pet but think they have to have a puppy or a kitten, or it has to be a purebred. If people could experience the pure love that these animals have to give when they find their forever home, I think their heart would melt in a way that they would never had ever expected, and they wouldn't give a second thought to that, the animal that they thought they had to have. The animal finds you. You don't necessarily find the animal.
Now, I'm sure that there are a few folks out there who are either underground Eileen Mitchell groupies or folks who are suffering from withdrawal due to lack of Pet Tales stories or updates. Any other ways folks can reach you?
Well, I do have a blog that it's not devoted just to animals, but a large portion of it is. People aren't surprised to see me constantly mentioning my newest Greyhound, Hazel, and I can be found at eileenmitchell.blogspot.com.
It's called I Didn't See the Asterisk.
Yeah.
What's the source of that title?
Well, it's always the fine print that trips you up. You read something and it sounds awesome, and you think, wow, this is such a deal. But you didn't see the asterisk. And you scroll down and you see that 4-point font fine print that says, all these limitations and restrictions and expiration dates. So that was kind of my approach. I didn't see the asterisk.
Creative title. You offered to actually share or read one of your past stories. Do you want to maybe give us a little intro before you offer the reading?
Sure. This one is about Elvis, of course, and it ran in the Chronicle and also in the Bark magazine, which I often contribute to. It's written as if he's still alive, because at the time he was. This was published maybe about 6 years ago. But it's one of those stories, again, that was just written from the heart. I mean, when I was writing about him, or anytime I write about my animals, I feel like I don't even have to think about what I'm writing, because the words just flow, because the love I have for them is just so real. And this came from an experience that I had with someone in a coffee shop. So,
all right.
Do you like me?
Yeah, take it away.
The title of this essay is called A Lifetime Dog. So there I was, alone, sitting outside the coffee shop, enjoying a latte, when a woman approached me. "Excuse me," she said, looking concerned. "Is your dog okay?" Puzzled, I reassured her that Elvis was fine. He'd gone on a walk earlier and couldn't be budged off his lazy dog recliner. But I had to ask, "I'm sorry, but do I know you?" "No," she replied, smiling. "It's just that I see you around town, and you're never without your dog. I wanted to make sure he's okay." She was right. Elvis is such an integral part of my life that even strangers see me as incomplete without him. I've loved many dogs since childhood, but none has been like this one. To use an expression coined by author John Katz, who wrote A Good Dog, Elvis is my lifetime dog, a dog I'll hold dear long after he's gone and others have staked their spots on the sofa. So many people have told me they had one dog in their life that meant everything to them, that stood out in their hearts and memories. Katz responded when I wrote asking about the expression a lifetime dog. He said, "Sometimes it was a dog that entered their life at a critical juncture or changed their life. But when people hear the term, they all nod. Loving a dog can be a powerful experience." Indeed, because Elvis isn't just a pet. He's my companion, my friend, my joy. He isn't a replacement for the husband I never married or the children I never had. Johnny Depp could be my betrothed and Cherub's my children. I wouldn't love this dog one iota less. When Golden State Greyhound Adoption delivered Elvis to my home 6 years ago, I had no idea what a life-altering occasion it was. When I first met my trembling new dog, I was struck by two emotions. First, delight that he was so pretty, immediately followed by sheer terror. How would I manage this horse in my house? Today I would ask, how would I manage without him? I love that Elvis greets me at the door with a toy in his mouth, jumping with joy whether I've been gone 10 minutes or 10 hours. I love how he rests his head on my lap while I'm watching television, watching nothing more than to feel my touch. I love how he guzzles his food with gusto, and then, with kernels of rice still on his nose, does a happy little trot as though offering his compliments to the chef. I love how he meanders to my bed every night and taps my face with his soft, wet snoot before retiring to his lazy dog recliner. I love caring for Elvis, stroking his knobby head, rubbing his velvety ears, observing him with other dogs, other people. Today, when I look at my beloved boy, who is now 9, I note his gray muzzle and eyebrows. Like his human, Elvis is showing signs of age. And unlike the life I might have enjoyed with that man I never married or those children I never had, I realize with an ache that our time together will be much too brief. That explains why I'm so fond of one particular Twilight Zone episode, titled The Hunt. It's about a recently deceased man and his dog. As they amble down a country road in the hereafter, they come upon a gate. "Welcome to heaven," the gatekeeper declares. "Except for the dog, that is." "What kind of heaven won't allow dogs?" the old man asks. "If he can't come in, then I'll stay out with him. He's been my faithful companion all his life. I can't desert him now." So the old man and his dog continue down the road. Later, they come upon yet another gate. "Welcome to heaven," the gatekeeper greets both man and dog. When the old man inquires about the previous gatekeeper's proclamation, he learns he'd been talking to the devil. He gets people who are willing to give up a lifelong companion for a comfortable place to stay, the old man is told. They soon find out their mistake, but then it's too late. And the man and the dog pass through the gates, toward the light, toward heaven. When I cradle my dog's face in my hands and I look into his liquid eyes, so full of unwavering loyalty and love, there's no doubt. Elvis is my faithful companion, my lifetime dog, and this is heaven. The end.
I'm totally choked up, so thank you so much for sharing that. What a powerful reading.
Yeah, it chokes me up to read it to this day because I miss my dog so much.
Yeah.
And I just recently read last week the man who, remember the TV show The Waltons?
Sure.
Earl Hamner, he just passed away last week.
Right,
and in his obituary, I read he was the writer of this particular episode of The Twilight Zone.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Knowing the emotion behind the TV show, The Waltons, it kind of explains the emotion of this particular episode.
Maybe you can offer some thoughts. The grieving process. We've had other guests talk about the death of a loved dog or cat. It's the same for everybody, and yet it's different for everybody.
Yeah.
What would you say are some of your reflections?
Well, you're right. You're absolutely right. It's completely different for everybody. Some people wait for years to get another pet. Some people feel like they can never get another pet. In my case, I had adopted a new greyhound named Olivia. I adopted her on Saturday as a companion for Elvis. I got her on Saturday. He was diagnosed with cancer on Tuesday.
Oof.
And yeah, so for 3 days I was in total bliss where I had my two beautiful dogs. And I lost him 3 months after the diagnosis. And I found that Olivia was my lifeline. If I hadn't had her to focus on, if I hadn't had her to spoil and indulge and love and just come home to, and knowing that I had given her a home, she saved me. Having another dog to care for is what helped heal my heart. She didn't replace Elvis, but she helped fill the hole in my heart.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about your childhood. Where'd you grow up and how'd you end up in California?
I'm a native. I was born in San Francisco, and I lived on the peninsula as a child, and then I moved to the East Bay as a child, and I've pretty much lived here all my life.
No kidding.
So I'm a local girl. Yeah, born and raised.
Any kind of favorite places outside of the area that you like to either visit or live?
In my dream life, I think my ultra life, I must have lived on the East Coast because I've always had a fascination with New England, with snowy winters and the fall colors and brick buildings. I mean, I think the first time I traveled back east and I saw brick buildings, I was like, wow, you don't have brick in California because of earthquakes.
That's right.
I was just fascinated with the brick homes. And the first time I saw leaves change in the fall, that was such an eye opener. So I think in my ultra ego, I would love to live on the East Coast, but California, born and raised, I'll be here all my life.
Any other last thoughts that you'd like to share? Anything that's on your mind that we haven't discussed so far?
Really appreciative of the opportunity to be able to talk about animal rescue and especially about greyhounds. And it's really been an honor to be able to share my passion for animals through my writing. And I'm very grateful that readers have responded the way I hoped they would, that they've responded with smiles and with touched hearts and with enthusiasm. As a writer, when you realize that you've connected with your reader, there's nothing more rewarding than that.
We want to say thank you to Eileen Mitchell for sharing her story and for that beautiful reading. If you want to learn more about today's episode, go to our show notes at thisispawprint.com/33. If you'd like to nominate someone to be a guest on Paw Print, simply email us at thisispawprint@gmail.com or go to our contact page, thisispawprint.com/contact. If you want to find me or Nancy on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, look for @thisispawprint, all one word. If you'd like to listen to more episodes of Paw Print, you can find us on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. And you can also listen to us on Podcast Addict, a podcast app on Android phones. We want to say thank you to all of you, our listeners out there, for sharing your stories. And we want to welcome listeners from Biloxi, Mississippi, Calgary, Alberta, as well as Munich, Germany. You spread a positive message of love and peace by saving an animal. Have a great day, everyone, and see you next time on Paw Print.
Paw Print is a production of EVER Education.
You can't handle the truth!
Woohoo!